The Chrysler LA 360 cubic inch V8. For decades, this engine lived in the shadow of its legendary sibling, the 340, dismissed as a smog-era compromise, overlooked, underestimated, forgotten by enthusiasts who chased big block glory or worshipped the high-revving 340. But here's the truth that nobody wanted to admit: the 360 was never the problem, the timing was. And while muscle car fans mourned the death of horsepower in the 1970s, the 360 quietly became one of Chrysler's most versatile, longest-lived, and secretly capable engines ever built. Today, engine builders know what the magazines got wrong. The 360 wasn't a disappointment. It was a survivor, a workhorse, and in the right hands, an absolute torque monster. This is the story of the Chrysler LA 360, the V8 that was better than people remember. To understand the 360, you first have to understand the 340. And if you were around in the late 1960s and early 1970s, the 340 was the small block to have. Introduced in 1968, the 340 was Chrysler's answer to Chevy's 327 and Ford's 289. It was a high-winding, high-compression screamer that made 275 gross horsepower in its debut year, and in reality, it was putting down closer to 320 to 330 horsepower at the flywheel when measured honestly. The 340 had massive 2.02-inch intake valves, a dual timing chain, a windage tray, and a high-rise dual-plane intake manifold topped by an 850 CFM Carter Thermoquad 4-barrel carburetor in its later years. The 1968 to 1971 340 had a 10.5-to-1 compression ratio, which was right at the edge of what pump gas could handle back then. It had forged internals, heavy-duty parts, and it revved. Boy, did it rev. And here's the kicker. Tests revealed the 340 was producing around 320 horsepower at the flywheel with a 4-barrel setup and 352 horsepower with headers, not the 275 horsepower Chrysler officially claimed. The NHRA knew it too. They immediately bumped the stock class index to 310 horsepower because they understood what Chrysler was doing. The low rating was likely to keep insurance companies happy and to make the 340 look less threatening on paper compared to big block alternatives. In other words, the 340 was a sleeper, a giant killer, a compact, lightweight V8 that could embarrass cars with much bigger engines. It was the perfect engine for the Plymouth Duster, Dodge Dart, and early Barracudas, light, nimble, and absolutely brutal when you stomped on it. But by 1972, everything changed. Emissions regulations and the shift to unleaded gasoline led to compression ratios dropping to 8.5-to-1 for 1972 and 1973. The intake valves were downsized from 2.02 inches to 1.88 inches, and the forged crankshaft was replaced with a cast unit to save money. The 340's horsepower rating fell to 240 gross horsepower for 1972, and while it still had the same cam, the glory days were over. By 1973, the 340 was producing just 240 net horsepower, still respectable by the standards of the day, but a shadow of what it had been. And after the 1973 model year, the 340 was gone, replaced, discontinued. The party was over. Enter the 360. The 360 was released in 1971 with a 2-barrel carburetor. It had a bore of 4.00 inches and a stroke of 3.58 inches, slightly under square compared to the 340's 4.04-inch bore and 3.31-inch stroke. Where the 340 was built to rev, the 360 was built for torque. Initial power ratings were 255 horsepower gross and 360 pound-feet of torque, or 175 horsepower net and 285 pound-feet of torque, right between the base 318 and the high-performance 340. But here's the problem. The 360 arrived in 1971, the same year emissions regulations started choking the life out of every performance engine in America. While the 340 still had its 10.5:1 compression ratio and forged internals in 1971, the 360 debuted with an 8.7:1 compression ratio, a cast crankshaft, and external balancing to save money. It was designed as a cost-effective replacement for the big block 383 in full-size cars, not as a performance engine. And so, from day one, the 360 was dismissed, overlooked, written off as a smog-era compromise, just another casualty of the 1970s malaise. But that wasn't the whole story. When the 340 died after 1973, something had to replace it, and in 1974, Chrysler did something smart. They took many of the 340's performance parts and swapped them to the 360, including the 4-barrel carburetor and the performance cam. This brought power levels up to 245 net horsepower and 320 pound-feet of torque. The result was the E58 Police Spec 360, a heavy-duty, high-performance version that became the backbone of Chrysler's police fleet throughout the rest of the 1970s. And here's where the 360 started proving the doubters wrong. The E58 was equipped with better flowing heads, a police cam with 252 degrees of duration, dual snorkel air intake, heavy-duty valve springs, and big dual exhausts. Some police package cars even came with forged steel crankshafts and H-beam rods, legitimate performance parts that made the E58 a serious engine. The 360 wasn't just surviving, it was becoming a workhorse. And unlike the 340, which had been expensive to build and difficult to certify for emissions, the 360 was cheaper, more versatile, and could be spec'd for just about anything Chrysler needed. By 1978, the 360 had evolved even further. The Lil Red Express truck used a modified E58 engine rated at 225 horsepower and was reportedly the fastest production vehicle in North America for those years. Because it was classified as a truck, it didn't need catalytic converters in 1978, which meant it could breathe freely. The result was an honest-to-God muscle truck that could embarrass Corvettes and Camaros at stoplights. And that's the thing about the 360. It never stopped being useful. Even when horsepower numbers were abysmal across the board, the 360 kept showing up in police cars, in trucks, in vans, in everything. Here's where things get interesting. The 340 was legendary for its ability to rev. It had a shorter stroke, a bigger bore, and it could spin to 6,000 RPM and beyond with ease. But on the street, where most driving happens between 1,500 and 4,000 RPM, the 360's longer stroke produced more torque, and for street use, torque is king. Think about it. The 340 made its power up high. You had to wind it out to feel the magic. But the 360, it had grunt down low. The 360's added stroke helped with low-end torque, which meant it pulled harder off the line, had more mid-range punch, and didn't need to be revved to the moon to make usable power. And for most street drivers, people who weren't drag racing every weekend, that low-end torque was more useful than high RPM horsepower. A 360 with a mild cam and decent heads could embarrass a 340 in everyday driving conditions. It just felt stronger where it mattered. Plus, the 360 was cheaper, way cheaper. A 360 could be found for a fraction of what a 340 cost, and because they were produced well into the 1990s, parts were abundant. You could build a serious 360 for less money than it would take to rebuild a worn-out 340. And here's the kicker. You could stroke a 360 easily. With a 4.00-inch bore and room to overbore, you could drop in a stroker crank and build a 408 cubic inch monster that made massive torque and didn't break the bank. Try doing that with a 340 and you'd run into clearance issues and sky-high costs. The 360 wasn't flashy. It didn't have the cachet, but it was practical, affordable, and incredibly capable when built right. Here's something the 340 could never claim: longevity. The 340 lasted just 6 years, 1968 to 1973. It was gone before most people even realized what they had. But the 360? It was released in 1971 and remained in production all the way until 2003. 32 years of continuous production. Think about that for a second. The 360 outlived the 340 by more than 2 decades. It survived the malaise era of the 1970s, the fuel crisis of the early 80s, and the horsepower wars of the 90s. It evolved, it adapted, and it kept getting better. In 1993, Chrysler released the Magnum version of the 360, which included upgraded cylinder heads, multi-port fuel injection, and improved reliability. The Magnum 5.9 produced 230 horsepower and 325 pound-feet of torque in standard form, and by 1998, that was upgraded to 245 horsepower and 335 pound-feet. That might not sound like much compared to modern engines, but for the 1990s, it was solid, dependable power. The Magnum 360 powered everything from Dodge Ram trucks to Durango SUVs to the Jeep Grand Cherokee. It was the workhorse engine that kept Chrysler's truck and SUV lineup competitive throughout the 90s and early 2000s. And when it was finally replaced in 2003, it wasn't because the design had failed, it was because the new Hemi had arrived. That's 32 years of service. 32 years of proving that the 360 was never a mistake, it was never a compromise, it was exactly what Chrysler needed when they needed it most. Fast forward to today, and the 360 has become one of the most popular engines for Mopar builders. Why? Because people finally figured out what the engine could do. Builders prefer the 360 over the 340 because it's cheap to acquire, plentiful, and tough, with a cast crankshaft that's bulletproof up to 6,500 RPM. And with modern aftermarket support, you can build a 360 into an absolute monster without spending a fortune. Want a 408 stroker? Easy. Stroker kits for the 360 are readily available with forged crankshafts, H-beam rods, and forged pistons, and they'll push you north of 450 horsepower with decent heads and a cam. Want 475 horsepower? You can build that too, with aluminum heads, fuel injection, and a hydraulic roller cam. And if you want to go even bigger, you can stroke a 360 to 410, 414, or even 418 cubic inches. The aftermarket support for the 360 is massive. Companies like Scat, Eagle, and Mopar Performance offer complete rotating assemblies, aluminum heads, roller cams, and intake manifolds specifically designed for the 360. You can build a reliable, streetable 400-plus horsepower 360 for less than it would cost to restore a worn-out 340. And that's the beauty of it. The 360 was never bad, it was just misunderstood. It arrived at the worst possible time, got labeled as a smog motor, and spent decades being overlooked. But the engine itself? Solid, reliable, capable. And when people finally gave it a chance, they realized it was exactly what they needed. So here's the truth about the Chrysler LA 360. It wasn't a disappointment, it wasn't a compromise, it was a survivor, a workhorse, an engine that powered police cars, trucks, muscle cars, and everything in between for more than 3 decades. It didn't get the glory of the 340, it didn't have the mistake, but it had something better: staying power. It outlasted every other LA engine, it evolved into the Magnum 5.9, and it became the foundation for some of the best budget performance builds in the Mopar world. Today, builders know the truth. The 360 wasn't worse than the 340, it was different. It made its power differently, it cost less, it was easier to find, and with the right parts, it could make just as much power, if not more. The LA 360 was better than people remember, and if you're building a Mopar today, don't overlook it. because chances are it's exactly what you need.